I'm going to take one step back here and take care of the background. And it's, depending on how complex your backgrounds are, sometimes you might want to simplify them for the sake of clarity of your image. It's if you have something in the background, then of course you don't have to do it. It might be simpler to pretend you've got a simple table or your items are sitting on a floor or something like that. So, the thing that we need to be aware of or conscious of is just where this particular um, item is in your layers. So of course I just made it so it's the first layer, but I can send it all the way to the back. And now if I look at my long stack here, it's going to be at the bottom. Now I can't really see much right, not yet, but I might want to just go ahead and make it null for now. But what I would want to do is have at least a stroke so that I could see the edge of it down here. So if I click off, you can at least see that. And again, you don't have to follow your images precisely. For this one, it's a pretty carefully composed painting, so it can't hurt to do such a thing. But if I didn't want this stuff in the front, I could simply not have this bit of the table that drops off. I could just simply have a large piece in the background. So you'll build your pieces, keep them on the very bottom layers, and then you'll be able to start to get some depth. And now I'm going to turn those off for now. I could even lock them just to make sure I don't accidentally get them in the way. Whoops, the wrong one. I forgot to move it to the back. Now you saw that you can select your area and go to the object tool and arrange it. But if you would rather just use your layer window, you can simply drag this down. So you'll have multiple boxes and color them all sorts of good things. I'll go ahead and do that. Now I wanted to give you another example. We did an orange. That's pretty simplistic overall, although you can see it was some time consuming. You can probably tell already that you might want to avoid certain fruits that are open. Apples would be easier. I'm going to do kind of a lumpy strawberry over here just to give you an idea of how that would work. So I'm going to use the pen tool for this one. And you can be somewhat, messy again down below where the bulb is, because we're going to be chopping that stuff off anyway. So for this one, I clicked, and then the second time I clicked, I held down, and then that opens up these Bezier curves with these little anchor points at the end. And then you can see it's kind of drawing a decent curve for me, actually, so I might just keep it. But I don't have to be careful at the bottom here, right? So then I can just come back up for where it's appropriate to add a curve, and so on and so forth until I rejoin this end. And I can tell I did a little bit of a mess up there. It's not a big deal. I just need to grab that point and push it in. Things like these tiny little circles would be up to you about how much detail you wish to include, but you do need to be careful in being consistent in that inclusion. So if there were little details here, you'd have to make sure that the details are also on other pertinent items, such as like the little bit of the center of the orange and striations and things like that. So, but some details to omit might be, you don't do the stripes on the bowl, for example. So just choose your battles wisely. This, you can do a couple rounds of things. If you're like, well, we'll see how long the rest of it takes. Let me do these first and see where it takes me. Now, keep in mind, I am only requiring a few objects. So, again, go through the directions. You don't need to have nearly as many as this still life does, so it's not meant to take you forever. It could just be, a few pieces of fruit and maybe a bowl, something like that. As long as you have some overlap, that's what I'm concerned about. So this is over the top in terms of still life for what you need, but still, there's some good examples in here. So, remember that you have to think in layers, right? So something like this, these little leaves, you could do with the pen tool. Nothing wrong with that. You could also try the blob brush tool, and you can always come back in and add more detail to something if you felt, the need for it. And this one, I can tell already, if I missed a little spot on here, I can fill it in, right? And if I didn't want to do that, I could also, let's see if I can find one over here. I'm just going to fill in really lightly, just to show you an idea of this. And then you can see, obviously this is a shape, right? But you could go to your shape builder tool and simply fill in that gap. So you don't have to spend time filling things if you don't wish to do that. Something like this would be, again, you can use the pen tool to create this other strawberry back here. And the key here is to not worry about, I'm not going to be worrying about detail right here, I'll just make it kind of quick. But anything that's behind something else, you don't have to be too careful about it, okay? So this one, I'm going to go ahead and change to white with a stroke of black. Oops, too thick. And then this one, I'm going to do the same thing. Sometimes it's helpful to see it like this just so you don't get too overwhelmed. But of course, the key here is that this particular part of the strawberry needs to go below the other one. So I would push it underneath, and all of a sudden now I already get the depth of 2. So it's all about the way that you arrange your layers. Some parts can get a little bit tricky in terms of things like the inside of the bowl, the outside of the bowl. What you might want to do is think about the bowl not being an entire piece, but there's a chunk here, and then there's a chunk here, and a chunk here, so that you can move your layers appropriately and still have that sense of depth. The front of the bowl would be its own shape, and of course that would come in front of the strawberry. One last thing that I'll show before moving on. I think you can make sense that most of the things, again, can be a combination of your simple shapes. In this case, there's a ton of ellipses, along with your pen tool, but don't forget that blob brush tool. It can really be super helpful. Now, there are some things where you might want to turn your rulers on. To do that, it's just Command R, or you can go up to View and turn on your rulers right here. And drag a guide where it's appropriate if you have anything that's really symmetrical. So for here, I could do that with the glass. Now, I think you can tell that these little circles would be quite easy to deal with. Those are just ellipses, sitting on ellipses. So once again, you could hold the Shift key with the Option key down and get, parts of these to work in your favor. And then again, you would use your shape builder tool to know what parts to keep, what parts not to keep. And if you don't like the way that they're working, you can always modify them, add your own lines in to get it. So for this one, I might say I might join this one together, but then move the particulars of the shape up a little bit more, so that way I could, make the slope be more appropriate. Yeah, something like that. So I'll just go ahead and color these two so we can see the beginnings. I'll go ahead and fill them in with white also, just so that it makes more, well, I'll do partial fill in. Sometimes you need to be able to see through parts of it. So this one, doesn't make sense anymore. I actually need to select these two together, and this now needs to join this shape, and so on and so forth. So, just keep building. Now in the end, little things like these little bits of shiny could definitely be another layer of detail. So I would suggest that you do the entire composition that you have with all the pieces that I'm asking for. First, you do it very, very simply, okay? And then you gradually add different rounds of detail until you have a similar thing happening throughout the whole. Okay, so I'm going to move up here just for a second, do one last example here using the pen tool. And, I can use an ellipse up here, right? That's probably pretty easily done. I'll go ahead and try to attempt that. Holding the Option key down again. And for this one, I would probably want to go ahead and duplicate him. And then, so copy, paste in place. remembering that it's placing it directly on top of each other. So I've got this one sitting on top of this one. I'm holding the command key down right now so that with the shift key, so I can get another version of it. And then of course I do my appropriate changes. This one won't be perfect, but that's okay. What I want to show you is that you can get a lip on this type of a cup thing. It's not perfect right now, but you get the idea. And then this is also an ellipse, so anything that you can copy and paste, do. So that bit of the wine sitting there, copy paste one of these ones, push it down there, and then excuse me, this curve, I would that's the kind of thing that I would try to do probably with the pen tool. And rather than starting right on the mark, I'm going to go ahead and start off of it because it can't hurt. And then I can simply click, hold, drag with the Bezier curves, and come down through here. And then I'm going to go past the middle mark because I know that I'm going to probably try to basically do some combinations of the shapes with the shape builder tool. So that looks super rough, right? But again, if I push this layer underneath these other two, so I can see a little bit more what I have going on, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that shape. So copy, paste in place once more. This time I'm going to take the transform tool and reflect it over the vertical axes so that I can get that to happen. And then I'm pushing it basically into place. You might need to change it to null or a lower opacity when you do that. For me, again, I need to push it down below the top of the glass. And then select everything. Use the shape builder tool to combine these two shapes, to use the option key to whoops. I can see that this one worked. Can you see how that one is isolated from here? And I can get rid of that one. This one, it just means that there's no overlap, so I would have to move my point in just a little bit more. So this one needs to overlap that a little bit. See if that's enough of an overlap. I think it should be, but time, you always get told for sure when you turn on your, there we go. So this one again, hold the option key down, get rid of it. At this point I could probably be fine. And maybe what I can do, whoops, I'm going to turn off that stuff so I can make sure I've got what I need. So I've got this, and this. And it looks like I need to do one more. I mean, I could try to get rid of these little pieces at the same time, but I'm going to just go option out. Yeah, I'll go ahead and just do it really quick. It doesn't hurt it too much. Join these ones together. Okay. And then I know that the overlap here is poor, but if you had done it more carefully, you would get that as a shape. That's a shape, etc. So now I can just grab with the selection key, and I'm going to temporarily move this out of the way. And that way, anything that's left over, like you can see there's these tiny little bits, you can just delete. And then anything like that, you might want to go ahead and group together so that it acts in unison. So just remember to be kind to yourself during this process. If anything can be duplicated, flipped, and then joined together using the Pathfinder or the Shape Builder tool, please do that. It'll save you a lot of time and energy.